thanks everybody. Take care, and it's been awesome. Cool. So a lot of really good conversations. Let's make some shit now, right? Let's get on with it. I guess a bit of feedback and top of mind thoughts. If we just go around the room, we started with you, Hans, and so I guess we'll start with you again. Thank you very much for being patient there. I don't know, like, what do you guys reckon, and feedback on that conversation?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it because obviously hearing different perspectives and different initiatives. But I just have a dying question for Thai. PETG. Are there actually raw material manufacturers in Australia?
Not one. So, and it's a lovely thought to think that we'll start making polypropylenes and all these raw materials in Australia again. I think it's highly unlikely. However, there is opportunity for alternative materials. Like already we're working on, yes, we've got a P2 N95 automated production line we're producing at the moment. And we're going to be using imported materials because we've got no choice. Australia makes no melt blown non-woven materials domestically on scale. So we're looking at an Australian material that can be used. It's a nanofiber material that can be produced using Australian raw materials. Because after this, I've already been 15 years. I've been working to not buy stuff from China, and I still go there 15, 16 times a year because I have to. If I can never go there ever again to buy a raw material, I will. Not for any other reason than critical products must be made here locally, and we must secure our supply chains. This crisis has shown us that, and I hope that's something people never forget. But there will be certain materials that we have to keep importing, for instance, the PET type materials. But, for non-critical products like face shields, we can start to look at, let's repurpose recycled Coke bottles and things like that. There may be opportunities to start using recycled materials rather than exporting those goods. There's a heap of really cool stuff that'll come out of this, but we've also got to be relatively realistic about what raw materials we will have access to, and some of the petrochemical stuff we just don't have enough. But at the same time, a lot of the conversations we've had now about what's going to happen past this crisis, how do we make sure businesses are viable into the future? I think a lot of that's been talking about producing product here domestically. I'm not setting up our production lines and our stuff to make product just for domestic. Like Australia should be a net exporter of high quality medical goods within weeks or months. The minute we get enough capacity to look after Australia, we need to be getting into the Pacific Islands, our closest neighbours, and we know the US and other countries are absolutely desperate for this stuff. So let's spool up and let's start helping some other people. And that's not that far away. That could be 6 weeks away from actually exporting this gear.
I 100% agree with that sentiment that, I always believe, if you want to do something, you have to have the ambition to become the best in the world, right? Like I often hear people say, oh, manufacturing here, but I think it has to be export-led, meaning create something of value at a very cost-competitive basis, highly automated, right? A great product, and integrating things like advanced material science and make it actually a premium product rather than a generic product.
So how do we, because manufacturing is pretty near and dear to my heart. I spent about 15 years in it. We had a printed circuit board manufacturing company in the US. 9/11 went bankrupt, 80 staff as part of the 2 mil contribution that Bonnie was talking about at the turn of the century. So how do we use this opportunity? Because one of the big challenges of upskilling quality, like both of you guys are saying, is making sure like equipment just costs so much. Like it just costs so much to tool and to get that initial base in play. Is there enough excess in what we're doing now to reinvest in capability and capacity, not just deliver short-term output? Do we have enough for moving forward?
In Australia, there are so many manufacturers. I run 24/7 at about 65% capacity right now. There are that many manufacturers around Australia that running one 8-hour shift per day, 5 days a week. They've got the capability. They know what they're doing. they need someone to help them out. I'm not a manufacturer, I'm a product developer. I just bought a manufacturing joint. There's so many manufacturers and they're terrible at marketing themselves and they're horrible networkers. So someone like Tony, Bonnie and the rest of the crew here, making those introductions, there's within a 5-minute drive of my shed, there would be enough manufacturers here to produce every face shield Australia will ever need to start exporting. They just don't know it yet.
You're going to say something, Bonnie?
I was just going to say, and we've seen this in the GFC as well, there's got to be a focus on funding syndication from the public and private sector, because as you're right, Chad, we don't know whether the government can take on the risk of investing in retooling a complete new capacity. And that's where the private sector can come in and whether through private investments or smaller crowdfunding initiatives. I think that particularly the roles that Chad, Tony, and I play with coordinating end to end, we're kind of seeing where the gaps are. We're not the only ones, and how other countries have solved it is mobilizing public-private partnerships, and there's usually a funding pool, a flexible funding pool with multiple sources of funding that can do things like immediately buy raw materials and supply, or help companies spend money on tooling, or help them with marketing. It's kind of like a public-private funded accelerator of sorts. And that's got to be the first thing that's needed. In order to drive the pressure to government, though, you need to have the big employers and players at the table. Most of the big players are getting bailouts the world over, and they're hurting at the moment, so they're not in a position to help. But there are other banks, there are other industries doing very well in this economy, and are already technology already contributing hundreds of thousands of dollars to help. Just we haven't figured out how to do it here in Australia. So to my knowledge, and maybe you guys correct me, I've only been here 5 years, is there a coalition of private sector leaders who can mobilize funding for the SMEs? Because that's what we did during the GFC in Portland. We had Nike, Intel, and Boeing come together, and we helped the SMEs, and the SMEs became the angel investors that then funded the startup ideas. And it was an end-to-end funding, kind of everybody paying forward but also paying back type of structure, and that just needs to happen here. We're small enough we can make it happen. The last month spent dealing with New York and California, it's a lost cause. It's a lost cause.
I want to hear from Tony and Victor, because this conversation that both of us have been having, one of the things I'm conscious of in Australia context is like we often don't, I'm cautious of not having a scarcity mindset. It feels like we don't have either a Nike, we only have like 1 or 2 Mindaroos, whereas in the US they have a lot more foundations, a lot more, but it's also lower taxation, so you have smaller government. It is just a different context. We have a bigger government, so therefore rely on it a bit more as far as those discretionary tax funds. Tony, you came off mute, and you're going to pop in with something. And I also want to hear Victor, because we've had this chat before as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just picking up on what Bonnie was just talking about then, but also what Ty was saying beforehand, and tying these things together. To me, this is just a fundamental question of sovereign risk. This is no longer an issue of whether it's an option. As I think Ty said, this crisis has actually demonstrated what the manufacturing sector has been screaming about for the last 10 to 20 years, is that we are offshoring all our capacity. For me, I saw this, through the .com, through the GFC. The first time we did this, my background was military. I was an aeronautical engineer in the Air Force. We were keeping F-111s in the air during the Kuwait War, first Gulf War. And we were using additive manufacturing 30 years ago while it was still military technology. So before anyone in the public even knew about what the hell this thing was. But we actually invested in building local companies. And it's interesting, I had a conversation last night with someone that made me remind me of this story, and I went online, and that company that we set up through the Defence Force 30 years ago is still actually operating today. And they are actually now based at Ambler Air Force Base, supporting Boeing's operation for it. So it is a need for it. So, and a lot of that, as Bonnie was saying, does come through triple P, public-private partnerships, and you actually look for your commercial outcomes and your returns. But I think government's got a huge role here. And I think there's two major issues, just, and I'll wrap up on these. One is, because I spend so much time in the ASEAN region now, whenever you talk about Australia, we're not even thought of, because we are just considered to be too expensive. It is just crazy. We are just too expensive. It's like, yeah, don't even go there. So one of the things I'm working on at the moment is building what we call the Australian ASEAN superhighway. We've got 600 million people basically sitting on our doorstep that we actually don't even talk to. And it's a massive market. But trying to actually, I've got the ear of all the Vietnamese and Singaporean governments and everything else, get them the ear of the Australian government on this conversation is really hard. And it's back to the tooling comment. I picked up on what Ty said before. We have massive manufacturing capability and capacity in Australia already, the majority of which is now sitting dormant. Every year, and everyone sort of keeps hearing about Ford and Holden and everyone else, and like 888 Motors, which are local here in Queensland. It's like they've retooled overnight to be able to actually produce critical medical supplies. There is so much capacity and spare resource and everything, as Ty was saying. I don't think the investment is actually as big as what we are making out. It's actually our free trade agreements and our structures and policies around procure local versus just go for the cheapest, which is always going to be China. We actually have to fundamentally revisit that and actually look at what are the manufacturing capabilities we need for sovereign risk.
I think, Tony, I've got a factory full of stuff. Like I went and picked that up. So we're now making that. I can make that cheaper than any country on the planet right now. So China can't make that cheaper than I can. I'm now exporting 3, 4 40-foot containers a month to America because I've got a good mate in America. He can't beat my price, and that's at 76 US cents. So at 56, we're toweling them up big time. So we can manufacture cheaper than Australia than overseas. I've got a joint full of the stuff. Yeah. So it's an absolute fact. Can be done as long as products are only shit products are offshored. That's the way it goes.
You made me laugh.
You design them, Brad.
Yeah. Because as soon as you said that, as far as the price point on Australian manufacturing, like Ty was up out of his seat, like, oh, okay, that's my button right there. Like, absolutely, like all right, game on. And Victor, like you and I had a bit of a chat, obviously with the accelerator model on how we support that, going on Bonnie's point as far as needing additional funds for that model. But then, like, obviously, Ty is an excellent example of how we can get production quality and capacity down domestically to be competitive. What do you reckon?
Okay, I'm mute. There's two different things. So one of the problems that we face is we don't have those big companies that are selling products that can distribute it. So we can manufacture. We just need, if only we had these brands that said, hey, you do this for us, and we're relying on government. Otherwise, we would have a lot more of these brands, and there's not much we can do yet. I haven't seen this growth in brands to leverage. So we do have to be, whether it is the manufacturer saying, okay, well, Ty's an exception because the product, he develops his own product, he bought a manufacturing plant. We need more of that because you're kind of flipping manufacturing and making it more of a product development, and potentially that's something we can do. Because if we're here waiting for companies saying, okay, this is what we want, you do it for us, but we don't have those big brands here, and they're struggling, they don't have the decision-making headquarters here, then we're stuck in this bit of a loop. So that's something there, and I don't have a solution, but it is a problem. I've been talking to players like the World Economic Forum. They're talking about advanced manufacturing, they're talking about Australia, and the discussion is, what can they do? And the reality is, they can. We have the tools here. What they can is bring those connections with those big players. They need to know we have the capabilities. They need to know that we have infrastructure. But so we need to, at that top level, improve those connections. But if that's not the case, then we have to create our own. Going forward around the accelerator, it becomes things like, product development. So how do we create these new brands from scratch? There was an R&D company I went to see yesterday, and they're developing this new ventilator setup design. Great, cool. But as we've heard before, this is all about immediate response. We're technically capable. We get something out there fast. And the question I had for them is, okay, what's happening next? Can you scale for the, for 3 months? Can you go global for the next pandemic, the next medical? Can this go in all hospitals? And the answer was, oh, we're not really thinking about that yet. We just want to address things now. And the problem is that if you don't think that way, then you're just going to run out of the resources quickly. Then you're going to say medical approval is going to be too hard, and then it's going to, all that effort is going to go. But if you actually look long term, then look at the commercialization side, look at the product development, the testing, trial. It might not be ready for what we need now, but this is going to happen again. So how do we get that mindset around identifying these areas where everyone will be affected? Logistics is going to be affected. Manufacturing is going to be affected. So all these technologies need to kind of think now and create these brands, and eventually they're going to then say, you manufacturers, do this for us. We've identified the problem, develop the product, and then go. So this is the, I guess, opportunity we have now, trying to stimulate that thinking. It's a bit, I'm going to say, late to do it properly, to react to what we have now, especially for brand new products. But it's more than enough time to start now to get ready for the next phase.
Yeah, thanks for that, Victor. And you mentioned an important word in that as well, as far as mindset. And I guess underlying themes, and even when I look across the screen, the different roles that we have here, from the collaboration piece, from the actual manufacturing, from people to do it end to end, and all of you are just saying, look, we're just going to get it done. Like nobody's giving you permission to do what you're doing now, and you're not waiting to ask for permission. You're just getting on with it. And I think the other opportunity we have here with the obviously with the virus, and the product that we're making is actually for the public health, which fits right in government remit, which means there's funding. So then how do we leverage that and build the capability, capacity, and the collaborative bodies and in the manufacturing? And even though, yes, Ty is exceptional, I think, Ty, you and I have had the conversation on how do we make exceptional the norm, so we create a new exceptional.
We're not exceptional. We're not exceptional by any means. We've just had a different school of hard knocks. Even like again, we're using the face shield example. That's about standing. That's not about. I could only do four tools out of the 40 in my facility because I've only got that capacity. So what I'm suggesting there is, for under $5 million, we'd stand up at least 40, possibly as many as 80 other injection molders around the country, and they'll all pull a couple of $1 million out of this over the next 12 months. What a cracking example. There you've got another 40 to 80 injection molders that are now giving guys like Victor and Hans and Raphael a phone call, and now engaging with a makerspace for the first time in their entire lives. They're now appreciating the value that hackers and 3D printing can bring to their old school blue collar injection molding business. So even though, yes, right now it's about standing up mass production because that's what we need to save lives, there is a spin-on effect that by getting blue collar guys involved with the rest of the crew, they start to learn of, oh shit, okay, next time I've got a problem, I'm giving Hans a call because I know he's got 10 lads down there that can have a look at this problem for me, rather than them trying to hack through it and make wooden models and use plaster and all that sort of rubbish that they used to do. So I think there's a lot of other spin-off benefits that come with it. But right now, I don't think we've got the luxury of time to talk about this and how can we make this work for all people for the next 10 years. Right now, it's about getting some instant results. That's mission critical. But it will have a flow-on effect naturally, for sure.
Excellent.
Can I say just one thing as a takeaway for us to think about? The thing that we have all agreed upon is the bottleneck is the government decision making, and nothing moves a government decision faster than a media scandal in the media, or industry power broker coalitions. And I would encourage this group to think about the pointing end of doing a PR campaign that is around an industry coalition and media around, since we're open source anyway and we're open collaboration, we've got a tremendous capability here. We've just got to talk about it and speak for the little guys And I think we have that responsibility to, rather than trying to, like I said, like everybody said here, we're not waiting for permission to act. So that might be something we might consider.
All right. Thanks, Bonnie. Well, whether it's a scandal or a good news story or a coalition, whatever happens out of this, look forward to seeing even the relationships that create here, even the people that were on the panel, which are now in all of our collective Slacks. Thank you very much. And we'll keep the conversation going. Feel free to join us on Slack. And we've got the tomorrow afternoon, we're chatting with the Queensland government, just as far as a bit of an example there. So we'll keep progressing this as much as we can, do what we can. If there's anything that we can do to help you guys, please feel free to reach out, and good on you, and thanks very much.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.